Hello everyone, welcome to this first episode of Down the Rabbit Hole with Will from AVU News here. Down the Rabbit Hole is kind of like what I think hi-fi is. You start off thinking that you've got a state-of-the-art fantastic listening system, can't get any better than the vast quantities of ill-gotten cash that you've hidden away from your better half in order to indulge your own personal listening experience, only to discover that in fact you're only at the entrance of this rabbit hole and it extends a lot further down than you thought. Welcome to a lifelong pursuit in the dream of trying to achieve the never perfection of reproducing live sound accurately in a hi-fi system at home. And it doesn't matter whether you actually ever listen to live music or not, or whether you just enjoy listening to music. Rest assured that once the bug has bit, it's game over. Game over, man, because your journey will never stop. There will always be little bits of increases, little ekes of performance, little things you can do to tweak your system to get a little bit more music, a little bit more emotion out of what it is that you enjoy listening to. And that's music, completely subjective. The only thing that matters in it is whether you enjoy it or not. Nothing else matters. And don't get stuck into the trap of having to spend money just to enjoy yourself. You don't have to. You can spend fairly modest sums of cash, as I have, because I only have modest sums of cash to blow, on systems that get you close to where you can sit down, just relax and enjoy it. Or so I told myself. Because that's absolutely not true. You will continue to spend, just abandon all hope, ye who enter here. And I suppose that no real expression of where this rabbit hole ends can be better summed up other than in the controversial topic of cabling, the subject of today's review. And cabling is one of those things that will always polarize opinion. There are those that believe it doesn't make a difference, and then there are those that believe it does make a difference. And then you get those in the middle who believe, yes, it can help, it can assist, it can adjust, it can fine tune, and it's one of those that if you don't have it, you'll notice it when it's gone. That's a bit of the camp of where I sit and find myself. And so for the review today, I have a pair of Den Hul Orchids, and these are interconnect cables, RCA as opposed to balanced. You can get them balanced if you like, and these are quite thin, quite small. We'll get into them a little bit. And together with those, I have a set of good old-fashioned Den Hul inspiration speaker cables. These have been around for quite a long time, and things that have been around for a long time are generally around for a long time for good reason. They're good, they're solid products, they last, they get the job done. So we'll get into exactly what it is that I discovered in my journey into Den Hul. Right, to begin with, I have started with, as one should, the instruction manual. In fact, it's not the instruction manual, it's the product brochure. And just to give you an idea, Den Hul's been around for decades, and they produce lots and lots and lots of cables. Page one. It just keeps going. The one we're interested in is the Orchid. Let me read to you what it says about the Orchid. It's the result of our so-called tunnel technology. South Africa, we don't use the word so-called. We use the word allegedly, but I don't think it reads well. Alleged tunnel technology. It is tunnel technology. New ideas about the transmission of ultra-low signals with a very high resolution have been the design parameters of our extremely thin triaxial interconnect. I do want to say that it is extremely thin. It's only about 3 millimeters, maybe a little bit thicker than that in diameter, but it feels robust. It feels like you could tow a truck with this. It just gives you that sense of strength in it. With LSE doped insulators, I have no idea what that means, but it sounds cool. LSC and doped, you know, how far on can you go? We've achieved an excellent protection against environmental effects as well as very low microphony. Right, so microphony, you can pick up what that is. It's kind of like the speaker doesn't turn itself into a microphone and pick up other signals to interfere with your musical signal. The Orchid is ideal as an interconnect, internal wiring for equipment, interesting, and also as a microphone cable. Okay. As an interconnect, it's available in balanced XLR and unbalanced RCA versions. I have the RCA versions, as you can see here. It retails for around about $8,000 a set, give or take. Pricing to be confirmed if I'm significantly out in that. And whilst that may sound like a hell of a lot of money, which it is, if you think about the fact that when you buy your hi-fi and you start changing your components between one to the other, you're going to keep these probably for a very, very long time before you need to replace them for something more substantial. So think of it as an investment into your hi-fi journey from now till the time you either change them or die, having run out of money. So that's hi-fi. That's the Orchids for you. The Inspiration, on the other hand, speaker cable. Let me tell you about that. Here we have fusion material, and it's another Den Hul innovation and consists of a completely amorphous alloy of 3 different metals. If you can guess what they are, there's a prize. The first is copper, no surprise there. The second is silver, no surprise there. But the third is interesting. That's zinc. And I would not have put zinc as an alloy to be combined with these 3, but Den Hul have done so amorphously. And due to the signal leads in a so-called star quad configuration, as well as an extra shield and central ground lead, so you can ground these cables, possible audio interference is avoided. Possible audio signal interference is avoided, thus holding the noise floor down, allowing to reveal more and richer detail without any sign of sonic harshness. Ideal in combination with our fusion technology-based interlink, the integration hybrid, which is not what we tested here. But these are them. They are substantial, and as you can feel, there's a decent weight to these things. And this is the so-called quad star configuration that they're talking about. Excuse all the knocking. These things are bouncing around on my desk, but that's the quad star configuration of these fairly substantial cables. And on the negative lead, you can see the earth line running through here. So that's kind of cool. Let's chat about what it is that we found when listening to these cables. Here we go, the tough part. No one said reviewing hi-fi would ever be easy, but you know, someone's got to give it a go. So here we go, our cables. What I decided to do, as opposed to referencing it against my existing cables, because it's so hard to try and pick up differences between cables, because these differences are subtle. You're never going to be hit over the head with a sledgehammer in the differences between cable A and cable B. It just doesn't happen. The variances between cable performance, as I say, are, and the best word for it is subtle. And it takes time to listen to cables, to listen to your system, to pick up what it is that you're hearing that may be different. Not better, not worse, but different. And remember that every single one of us has a different auditory experience. Our ears are built differently. Our ear canals are built slightly differently. So we do hear things differently, but the way we hear them and the way our brain processes them is largely similar. That's what keeps us alive. When we can hear the lion creeping from behind us to our left, we know to run forward to our right. So our directional sense of hearing is exceptionally well developed as humans. So I started my program with these good old-fashioned patch cables that come standard. These are slightly longer than normal, and in fact they might actually be even thicker than normal, but these are kind of typical patch cables that come with hi-fi components these days. And our advice is always take these and throw them away. I use these because they're long and I have some application with video and sound that I do use them for every now and then, where the sound quality is not important. I just need to be able to connect from A to B, primarily to carry my voice. So that's what I used as a reference. And against the dear old Orchids here. For my speaker cables, I actually don't have them on here. I use just good old-fashioned patch cable, the stuff you go and buy from Game at £2.50 a meter. In fact, it's probably more than that. It's probably about £5 a meter. You're asking, what are the inspirations cost? I didn't tell you because you probably need to sit down. They're around about £3 a meter, give or take. And termination might or might not be included in that, depending on how well you talk to your dealer. But roughly £6 to £7 for a meter of it. Typically a meter is not enough. These are 1.5 meters in length, which is probably about the minimum that one needs for a decent hi-fi setup. But you know, it's an investment. Again, these you're probably never going to replace because they are high performance and durable as hell. Just whilst we at it, talking about durability, if we just look at these banana plugs, you can see that they actually have a slightly bowed out section here. That ensures that when you plug them into your amp and into your speaker, you're getting a good solid connection. So you're not losing any of that vitally important high amperage signal, the electricity running through these cables. You're not losing any of that at the junction points. And similarly with these RCAs, you can see they're high quality. It's a dual sort of inner and outer there. So the inners are not allowed to splay out when you push them onto the jack. They're held in place, and these then maintain a very nice, tight, firm connection. Again, important. Any losses you have here can never be regained. They're gone. That's it. Sorry, Nunu, that's gone. So you want to maintain as much of your signal integrity at the connection points as you do through the cable throughout your listening process. So that was that. I benchmarked these two cables against what is very entry-level cabling. And as always, when it comes to cabling, it's always polarizing as to what it is that you're hearing and what you're not hearing. But the differences between the two are sufficiently noticeable enough that alone is worth the asking price, specifically when one considers that these are cables of such a high quality that you're going to use them for a very, very long time indeed. And for guys who've got existing systems, these are fun to try, because every now and then you'll plug in a set of cables and you think, I'm not hearing a difference. And then a week later, you'll be like, oh, wait, hang on a second. These do make a bit of a difference to my system. And at that point, you know, you might as well just accept the fact that you've bought them and buy them, and that's that. Leave them in your system. That's exactly what's happened to me along the line. You know, sort of walk in and out of your sound room from time to time. And you think, hang on a sec. Oh, actually, I quite like that. What is it? What have I changed recently? Cabling. Okay. And yeah, it happens less and less these days, because as one's standard of cables goes up and up, yeah, the price for the improvement becomes part of that rabbit hole we talk about in hi-fi. It can run away with you. So definitely with the interconnects played in place, immediately the soundstage just widens up. You know, you get more detail coming through. That's an indication of what's happening with your source signal. So your digital source typically is converted via your DAC into your preamp coming out of your system. Whether that's done in the digital domain or not, it's an analog signal that these carry through to your amplifier. In this case, I was going from my Blue Sound node direct into my amplifier. And you know, the case is that the information that's now being able to be relayed through the cables is maintained. The cables are not allowing any of that precious information at fairly low currents and fairly low voltages to be lost before it gets to the amplifier. And that's what you begin to hear. You begin to hear an increase in the depth of the soundstage, an increase in the level of detail, an increase in the overall musical performance of your system, which is the hi-fi reviewer's catch-all phrase of saying it was better than before. And can you hear it? Yes, you can. It takes a little bit of getting used to. It takes a lot of listening to your system, and it takes a lot of understanding what your ears are hearing and why they're hearing it. And when you've got increased detail, it is always better, always better. And just on note, if you don't have a recording that has that detail in to begin with, you're wasting your time and everybody else's, because no cable is going to give you that if it isn't present in the recording to begin with. And so sometimes one finds oneself listening to recordings one would not normally listen to. It's not your music, it's not your style, you just don't enjoy it. But the detail that's in the recording is fantastic. And as long as you know that your system is capable of reproducing that detail, then when it comes to listening to any other music, you know the detail's there. It's not a compromise on your system, it's a compromise on the recording, but it may be of music that you enjoy, and so you can just forget about the recording and enjoy the music, which is what we as hi-fi guys sometimes forget. We don't want to listen to the system, we actually want to listen to the music because we're emotionally engaged in the music. Yes, girls, your guys, when they're listening to their systems, are emotionally vulnerable. Go and get them. Right, let's move on swiftly before we get into more trouble. And let's talk about the speaker cables. Okay, so these guys, as I say, properly terminated, properly connected, and very simple in terms of installation. Plug it into the amp, plug it into the speaker, and that's that. So I have to talk briefly about directionality. Everyone says speaker cables, and in fact interconnect cables are directional. Some of them are, some of them are not, but generally if you've got wording imprinted on the cable, that's the direction of your source. So source here, going to speaker there. Follow the writing. So these are directional. So this end of the cable was plugged into the amp, and this end of the cable was plugged into the speaker cable, and I let them run for both interconnects and speaker cables for around about 10 days each, just to get a sense of what they're doing whilst I was walking in and out of my sound room, music playing continuously, and having the occasional 5 minutes, which always turns into like an hour and a half of just listening to music, because that's what we do. That's what hi-fi is there for. And certainly in terms of delivery from the amp to the speakers, yes, there's you hear it most predominantly in my mind, in my instance, and in my experience of this, and I stress it's all personal and subjective, I was getting a deeper level of bass resolution out of these speaker cables. That I attribute to the fact that I'm getting more current going through them than I am through my thin little 5 rand meter patch cables. Whether that's enough or not on a physics level to be able to justify it, I don't know. I'm just telling you what I think I heard on the cables. And I had a deeper resolution of my bass. And what that means is that not necessarily that my bass was any deeper, it was just that it was more defined and more controlled. So I had a sense that my bass was less boomy. And that's why there's a school of thought that cabling can be used to tune rooms. So if you've got a bit of a bass issue in your room, sometimes cabling can make that small little difference that helps your room, helps your sound, helps everything just come together a little bit more coherently than it would before. And again, it's a case of look at the size of these things. They are going to last you literally a lifetime. And an investment in cables such as these is something that I think is hard to ignore. One needs to have a look at it and consider it deeply if you're in any way hi-fi oriented. So there we have it. We have a very simple 2-pair system that will drive very, very good systems to even very, very exceptional systems quite comfortably without embarrassing anybody. And I think that's the point of why we do what we do. And if it improves our system a bit and it improves our enjoyment and it engages us emotionally, then as far as I'm concerned, that is job done. Right, so final thoughts. Let's just wrap this up as I go along. And I realize I'm sorry about the lighting with my window back there, but it is what it is. We live and learn as we go. The story around cabling, I hate reviewing cables because they are so difficult. The differences are subtle. Let's make no mistake about it. As I said earlier, you're not going to be hit by a sledgehammer when you change cables in the system. You will notice differences. Whether these differences are better or worse is entirely up to you to decide as to what it is that your ears are hearing. And remember what I said, everybody hears things differently. And if a cable is able to give you a little bit more precision because it's a nanosecond faster in terms of being able to transmit signals or transmit them more accurately through your entire system, that can play a difference in how you perceive the system. Because remember, the way we hear is our ears are astonishingly accurate in terms of being able to position things. It's why stereo systems allow us to be able to see sound stages and depths of sound stages and hear sounds going up and down, even from a speaker system where you've got cones moving in different locations. The differences are that subtle. And it's important to understand that, again, I'm going to emphasize the fact that if it isn't there in the recording, the cables aren't going to save you. So they will reveal if it's there in the recording, but they will not put it into the recording. Okay, so you need to understand that as part of the process of what it is you're listening to. Get some good recordings, even if it's music you don't like, get some good recordings and understand what you're listening to and how your ears are perceiving it and how your system is producing it. At least then if you know your system can do it, it doesn't matter if you listen to rubbish music. As long as it's rubbish music that you happen to enjoy, then you know your system is doing what it needs to do. And even if that's totally unimportant to you and you don't care and you just want a system to play doof music at parties, do you know what? Doof music played a little bit better than just with through these cables, a little bit more sparkle might just give you a little bit more of a sense of a vibe at your doof party. So cables, I don't think you can ever go too far wrong in terms of buying a decent set of cables and have a listen to them, spend the time. They are, as in this particular case, not for free. They're not outrageously expensive. I mean, we've seen Interconnect cables that go for 250,000 Rand for a pair. Match those with the 250,000 Rand a meter for the speaker cables, and you start to get a sense of what this rabbit hole can start to look like, and that's just in cables and hi-fi. So be warned, this is what happens, and it's all, at the end of the day, it's up to you. So have a listen, and as I say, I can't fault these cables in any shape, form, or fun, and they absolutely do what they say they do on the tin. It's up to you to listen to them and decide for yourself. This is Will for AV News. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, please share it far and wide, and let's see what else is coming up for the next episode of Down the Rabbit Hole.